character of integrity and ingenuity, known as the man who put the world on wheels, Henry Ford has become one of the most significant and influential icons ever to grace the world of automobile history. He had a dream of producing a quality car that would be affordable to the general public, and with the advent of his famous Model T in 1908, such precepts were wholeheartedly achieved. The Model T was a revolution in personal transportation, and by 1913, in order to keep up with the demand, Ford had established the first ever continuous production assembly line. 5 years later, and half of all American cars were Model Ts. The era of mass production had dawned, with Henry Ford transforming the art of car manufacturing forever. Many of the pioneering precepts behind the Ford Motor Company remain to this day, with Ford continuing to be a leader in the increasingly competitive world market of motoring. So now, there's only one thing left to do, and that's to sample a few of the classic Ford favourites for ourselves. The story behind the Ford Popular goes back to the year 1932. Ford had previously had a very prosperous export market of their larger engined models, but since higher tax penalties for bigger engine sizes had been introduced in the 1920s, Britain now needed to go small. 15 examples of small European cars were shipped to Ford's headquarters in Dearborn, Michigan, for evaluation and to spark ideas of how Ford could develop its first truly small and economical car. The result was very pleasing, and the 8-horsepower Model Y left the production line at Dagenham factory in August 1932, dubbed as a most stylish and well-performing small-budget car. The arrival of the Model Y could not go unnoticed by other competitors in the field, and car company Morris was particularly keen to produce their own version. With this emerged the Morris 8. Sharing many similarities with the Model Y, engineers at Ford knew they had to push themselves even further to surpass their previous masterpiece. The advent of the Model Y went on to inspire the creation of the Ford Anglia series, where its bloodline continued until the production of the last Ford Popular in the late 1950s. In all the 27 years of this evolution, every model was in fact based upon the same simple chassis frame, transverse leaf spring suspension, and a version of the side valve engine as first used in the Model Y. The first Popular, the 103E, introduced in 1953, was basically a stripped-down or de-trimmed version of the early Ford Anglia E494A with a Ford Prefect engine. It was an all-time first for the British saloon market when it was launched at the rock-bottom price of just £100. Fancy frills and quirky catchphrases were simply not necessary in Ford's advertising slogans for the new car. The simple phrase, "the lowest price car in the world," was more than enough to do the trick. Although very simple, the 103E Popular Saloon was strong, sturdy and extremely functional, with a classic 1950s style. Based on pre-war running gear, the 4-cylinder 1172cc engine had the basic side valve unit and was mated to a 3-speed gearbox. The Ford Popular could reach a maximum speed of 61 miles per hour, and although this statistic may not cause a huge buzz of excitement today, especially compared with the current fast-track market, back then there was nothing to complain about, and for the outstanding bargain price, it was even better. With tiny headlamps and painted bumper, the trim was fairly primitive, and the single vacuum-powered windscreen wiper was quite breathless. In certain conditions, the wiper could be altogether puffed out. However, this was a standard problem of the vacuum wiper mechanism and not just an inconvenience tied to the popular models. Other cars in the Ford side valve engine family, such as the Prefect and Anglia, were also subject to the same problem. As Ford upgraded and improved their Anglia and Prefect ranges, the 103E Popular remained unchanged until 1959, when the 100E model was released. Having many similarities with the previous three-door, four-seater popular car, the 100E retained the 3-speed gearbox and temperamental vacuum-operated wipers. The new Popular, like its sister 100E Anglia, now had a mesh grille. The rear lamps were changed to separate Lucas units, and with a more advanced version of the side valve engine, the 100E could reach a top speed of 69 miles per hour with a 0 to 60 of 36.4 seconds. The Ford Popular served the British people very well during its production days, and in true Ford style provided a robust and economical car that was accessible to the masses. Today, this modest little number has become a much celebrated and adored classic Ford car. The Ford Anglia made its first appearance just before the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939. In true Ford style, the engineering and design were kept simple and practical, ensuring a very decent and affordable package was provided. The original model, codenamed E04A, included mechanical brakes and the basic side valve engine without water pump as used in the earlier 7Y 8 horsepower Ford model. The Anglia was available as a two-door, four-seater saloon, and what colour could they possibly come in other than the famous Ford black? The first Anglia van variant, the E04C, was released in 1940. In fact, throughout the duration of Anglia production, a van derivative was always made for each model type, providing faithful vehicles for firms up and down the country. In 1948, after the 55,000th 807th model had been produced, the original Ford Anglia was discontinued. The slightly improved replacement, the E494A, featured very few alterations, including slight trim and front-end restyling. There was also the addition of those more handy items that we'd be lost without today, such as indicators and a second windscreen wiper. The new Anglia was built from 1948, providing a stopgap until the arrival of the next upgrade, although it didn't receive a new lease of life when it continued as the Ford Popular until 1959. As the Anglia was finding its own feet within the British motoring market, the success of the Ford Consul and Zephyr series were proving most impressive. They'd even rid Ford cars of their affectionate nickname, Dagenham Dustbins, which related to the low-priced but highly respected cars produced in Ford's Dagenham plant in Essex. Ford decided to apply the Consul Zephyr styling and engineering principles to the new Anglia 100E model. The revolutionised unitary body, fashionable three-box styling and McPherson-type strut front suspension gave the Anglia a very contemporary look, and soon a more tweaked deluxe model was introduced. Even though the old side valve engine lay beneath the bonnet, and the vacuum-operated wipers could fail when going uphill, the 100E Anglia served a prosperous life until 1959, with almost 3,500 in circulation. Immediately after followed the Ford Anglia 105E, available in deluxe and standard versions. The standard model, although very functional, was true to its name with basic design inside and out. No carpets, no passenger sun visor, no glove box lid, and certainly no extravagant use of chrome, as the more luxurious version proudly displayed. The stylish body shape of the Deluxe was chrome-enhanced at every possible line and curve, including the side strip, full width of the grille, and rear lamp units. Optional Deluxe extras were a heater and two-tone body paint. The Anglia 105E Saloon series was quite a revolution. It got away from the old side-valve engine, converting to a new overhead type that was capable of 75 miles per hour. Not only this, but Ford installed its first ever 4-speed gearbox used in a production saloon. What caused even more of a stir, though, was the radically styled reverse-sloping back window. Adding to the visibly American-influenced looks was a sharply sloping front and extended rear fins that helped make the 105 Anglia an altogether attractive and highly popular car. The range continued almost unchanged until the summer of '61, when the van variations were launched, shortly followed by the Ford Anglia Estate. The Estate version came about as a conversion project of the 105E Anglia Saloon. From the centre door pillars forward, there was no difference between the two models, but the Estate did provide a little extra load space for the heavier traveller. The saloon's original boot area measured just 10 cubic feet, compared with the 35.4 cubic feet that could be gained out of the Estate once its hinged rear seats had been folded forward. Also, to cope with any extra weight in the boot, suspension was uprated and tyre size increased. The next and much more powerful model added to the Anglia range was the 123E, otherwise known as the Super. Launched in 1962, the stylish Super used a larger 11.9cc version of the standard Anglia engines. Customers in Europe were offered a unique variant called the Anglia Sportsman, although the only real difference was a spare tyre mounted onto the back of the car, resembling the Continental kit style often seen in America. And so the Sportsman marked the end of a long and successful production life that spanned for over 20 years. During its day, the Ford Anglia was even a popular choice as a police works car. Reliable, functional and smart, the Anglia will faithfully remain as one of Ford's most cherished classics. During the 1950s, Ford planned to develop a car for the middle range of the British motoring market, suitable to contend with the likes of the Vauxhall Victor and A55 Cambridge, the then dominant models in this area. As a result, the introduction of the Ford Classic followed. Although a success, the Classic turned out to be a far more upmarket car than planned, so it was back to the drawing board once more. Ford's next project, codenamed the Archbishop, aimed to build an economical yet high-performance car whilst trying to stick to a modest production cost. designers started by stripping down the Ford Classic and reducing its body weight by 15%. A Kent engine, stroked up to a capacity of 1198 cc using a 3-bearing crankshaft, and by 1962 the first Ford Cortina of the 5-generation series had commenced mass production. Front suspension used the McPherson strut system, whilst leaf spring suspension with shockers made up the rear. The Cortina's stylish look was finished off with a distinctive tail light feature that was to become its definitive hallmark. By 1963, customers had the option of a 1500cc engine, which used a 5-bearing crankshaft. Originally available as a 2-door standard or deluxe, the Cortina was soon available as a 4-door. The Super Deluxe Lotus Cortina with twin-cam engine GT and estate versions were all introduced in 1963. It was with special thanks to the success of the Lotus and GT models on the rallying circuit that Ford's already impressive image continued to flourish. Developments of the Mark I were endless. In 1964, an interior ventilation system was fitted that could replace the air in the car every 40 seconds, a point made very clear in Ford's advertising literature. Other changes included the standardisation of windscreen washers, 9.5-inch disc brakes and a heater. Indicators and parking lights were also incorporated into the redesigned front grille, and in total, well over 1 million Mark I Cortinas had been produced by 1966. But this record was soon exceeded with the advent of the Mark II. The new contemporary styled model appeared in autumn 1966. Even though it was sitting on the same floor plan as the Mark I, its increased width made it look bigger. Apart from lighter steering, a tighter turning circle, and a few suspension alterations to compensate for the wider tracking, everything else stayed more or less the same. But of course, hot in pursuit of perfection, Ford soon started on further improvements. A significant change was the revision of the Kent engine, which incorporated a new cylinder head that meant combustion took place in the top of the piston crown instead of the cylinder chamber. The 1200 and the 1500cc engines were stroked up by another litre, and at the top of the range a maximum speed of 87 miles per hour could be achieved. The Mark II Lotus Cortina superseded the Mark II GT on the rally circuit, although the GT was given its chance to shine in the East African Safari Rally of '67, where it took second and third place, earning Ford the manufacturer's team prize. In the meantime, Japanese car imports were becoming highly popular, and British manufacturers were feeling the heat. Ford responded with vigour, and the Mark III Cortina made its debut appearance at the London Motor Show in 1970. With an extra dose of glamour and luxury, no less than 35 variations of the Mark III were on offer. The executive models with velour upholstery, deep pile carpets and wood-finished interior were particularly popular, but today the Mark III has become quite a rarity. In 1976, the Mark III developed into the Cortina Mark IV with an identical floor plan and suspension. The choice remained extensive, but the new car now took on a squarer shape. This model had the shortest lifespan of all the Cortinas, but with the slight makeover by the early 80s, it continued its life as the Mark V. The top of this model range contained the most powerful engine of all the Cortinas, the 2.3 V6 with automatic transmission. The hard edges of the Mark IV were softened, with a curvier nose and new lamps, but other than this, the Mark V had no remarkable differences. The Cortina convertible had also come into play during this time and were available right across the model range. They were, however, quite scarce, and people have since made their own conversions. With the Cortina, Ford had created a car for all occasions, highly practical for family use, with the Lotus and GT derivatives making excellent choices for the rallying circuit. The last Mark V Cortina was produced in 1982, heralding the end of a long and most successful chapter in Ford's history. Promoted as the car you always promised yourself, the Ford Capri sparked a buzz of excitement, serving anybody who wanted an affordable yet sporty car with a practical and family-friendly design. The project, named Colt, initially aimed to design a car for Europe that would produce the same reaction and success as the Ford Mustang had previously had in America. With these precepts in mind, Ford developed an outstanding creation with an astute marketing ploy to match. With the launch of the Ford Capri in January 1969, the British public woke up to find the new arrival strategically parked in hundreds of places across the entire country. The choice seemed endless, and no car dealer could stock every option that was available. There was a range of different-sized engines, from the 1300 to the 2000 GT, and soon there was the 3000 GT, which became the fastest production Ford car to be built in Britain at that time. If you wanted to dress the standard base car up, there was a choice of 3 different conversion packs. The X pack gave the customer extra equipment, the L was for luxury, and the R kit provided rally equipment, but it wasn't uncommon to see a combination of these specifications. Success in rallying certainly did no harm for the Capri's appeal, with the four-wheel drive 3000 GT Special wowing television viewers in the Winter Rallycross series of '69. Later, Ford Germany developed an RS 2600 Capri with a V6 engine that went on to dominate the European Touring Car Championships for 2 consecutive years. Cologne in Germany and Halewood in the UK were the only 2 Ford sites to manufacture the Capri. In 1970, the most popular new European Ford car was a Capri, with almost 750,000 being produced by 1972. Various tweaks and alterations were made to the Mark I series of Capris over the years, including a power bulge bonnet, new rear suspension with anti-roll bar, as well as larger and more powerful lamps to the front and rear. Ford also introduced a 1.6-litre Kent engine to replace the overhead cam Pinto unit, whilst other general changes developed a softer ride with easier handling. By 1974, Ford was keen to develop even more dramatic enhancements, leading to the introduction of the Mark II Capri. The obvious difference was the new hatchback form, as opposed to the Mark I 4-seater coupe model. The hatchback allowed for a much greater storage capacity, although it wasn't necessarily to everyone's taste. Differing from its predecessor, the Mark II included larger front disc brakes, better electronics, as well as alternators fitted as standard instead of using dynamos. The 2-litre V4 engine was abandoned for the modern overhead cam Pinto 4, and the X, L and R packs were discontinued as many found the concept quite annoying. Soon the Gear arrived on the scene, replacing the Capri GXL. It offered a range of extra features, such as an interior vinyl roof and rear screen wipers being the epitome of pure luxury at the time. In March 1975, the S model joined the Capri range. A racy little number with gold-coloured alloy wheels, door handles and window mouldings. Customers could choose from a range of engines, with the 3-litre being the largest. Later refinements to the suspension and the addition of gas-filled rear shock absorbers gave an altogether smoother ride. In 1975, all British production came to a close, and manufacturing was sustained solely at the West German factory, from where the final Capri models were built. These included all of the previous Capri model types, which now moved on to the 3rd generation. The range of the Mark III was similarly extensive to the last edition. Cameo, Calypso and Cabaret specials were introduced, but enthusiasts were particularly impressed with the new 2.8 fuel injection Capri. With an impressive 0 to 60 in under 8 seconds, the 2.8 was the fastest production Ford in Europe at that time. But all was not entirely well for Ford Capri during the early 80s, and as sales dropped, the range slowly disintegrated. One of the last models was the Laser, but the final burst of Capri spirit came in the form of the 280 model, also named the Brooklands Capri. This car was based on the 2.8i Special, but with a good dose of luxury. The 280 was padded out in leather upholstery, leather-trimmed steering wheel, plus low-profile tyres and alloy wheels. Ford made sure that the last of the Capris went out in true style. With an impressive 18 years in production and well over 1.5 million built for sale, the Ford Capri is fondly remembered by all and continues to be enjoyed by enthusiasts everywhere. Since Henry Ford's first revolutionary Model T of 1908, the world of motoring has not once looked back, and in September 1946, Ford was honoured at the American Automotive's Golden Jubilee, where he was recognised for his major contribution to the motoring industry. Over the last 100 years, Henry Ford's influence has not only shaped the world of Ford Motors, but the entire industry of car manufacturing. Enthusiasts have cherished their Ford classics for many years, but with the rapid progression in technology, the car is entering a new era, and soon models such as the Anglia, Popular and Capri will become even more sought after. We can only wait to see what new creations and concept Ford has in store for the next 100 years, and discover which Ford cars of today will become the classics of tomorrow.